Just click share. And then...
Hey everyone, this is Tom from CertifID. We're going to let everyone in, so we will get started in about 60 seconds. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share. We have a ton of information to cover. Brent, can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, good morning, everyone. We're excited to kick off this new webinar series to catch a fraudster. You know, each month we're really committed to delivering a fresh trend in fraud that's taking place around the country, covering an analysis of the fraud, how it impacted the transaction participants, and what could have been done to prevent what occurred. So our focus last year, if you remember, was really protect and prosper. And as we've seen a sharp increase in fraud, particularly, we'll get into this, the first part of this year, we're seeing velocity and activity that we haven't seen in full calendar quarters last year, approaching real estate fraud. We wanted to make sure that we're laser focused so that each month you have a fresh takeaway of what you could do to make not only your companies, but your customers and the whole ecosystem safer. So by way of housekeeping, if you have any questions, put them into the questions panel. We'll be monitoring those in real time. Everyone's going to receive a copy of the presentation and the recording after, and we're going to have a survey. So please, our desire is to make sure that this is the best time that we can have together, and the survey results just guide us on the topics that are just top of mind for you that we can help. So again, this Catch a Fraudster series is something that you will not want to miss each month. We already have next month's planned, and Nick's with me here. We're going to start releasing that probably by the end of the week or early next week. Invite your colleagues, your referral partners, your prospects. It's great storytelling, super timely trends and tips. So without further ado, let's jump into this. I have to apologize in advance. I'm a bit double booked. I've got another engagement at 11:30, but we are in good hands with Nick from our team here, Brent and Ronnie that I'll introduce in just a second to bookend the best practices around email security, which is where we're going to end. So with that, for those of you I haven't had the privilege to meet, my name is Tom. I'm a recovering lawyer, large agency owner, wire fraud victim, and now devoting my life through the CertifID project, which is a business email compromise and wire fraud solution, particularly for the real estate industry, to protect all incoming and outgoing wires. And we're involved on a very frequent basis on wire fraud recoveries. Ronnie is an absolute beast. I've got to know Ronnie over the last several months. He is a senior threat researcher at Agari. He loves kimchi games and is a father of 3. He's awesome. We're thankful that we have guys like Ronnie out there that are scouring behind the curtain to make the digital world a better place, a safer place. So Ronnie, if you want to add anything there, otherwise I'll roll into Brent and we'll get right into the fraud.
I say no, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah, I like to track a lot of the bad things so other people don't have to. I tried to mess with my filter, but I can't kind of figure out how to get this cat filter off my screen. So y'all are going to have to bear with me on that one. So
I love it. And Ronnie and I have been involved in many, many recoveries together alongside the Secret Service and the FBI, and just some behind the curtain stuff that he's exposed me to that we're kindred spirits in that way, in the sense that there can be a force for good with all the bad that's taking place in digital fraud. And then Brent's with us as well. Brent, sorry, I didn't have a copy slide, but
No worries.
Brent is actually our IT manager for Sun Title, the title company that my partner Lawrence and I own, one of the largest agencies in Michigan. And I'm bringing Brent in not only as the subject matter expert of today's fraud that we're profiling, but also to get a perspective internally of how your IT teams, either internal or external, need to respond when a threat is, when a threat's taking place or a wire fraud is happening in real time. So again, the sequence of this, we're going to profile what happened, why the fraud happened, what could have been prevented. What I'm excited about today is that we are going to dive really deep into email security. So this fraud was all about an email compromise that led to a wire fraud, but then also led to our company being spoofed through a competitor's server. So we're going to spend the last 10 minutes talking about the settings and the vulnerability that may be there in your email system, but also more importantly, or as important, the referral partners that you're doing business with, like real estate agents. So like almost every wire fraud that we will profile this year, it all starts with a phishing email. And for those of you that are not familiar with the term phishing, this is a strategy used by fraudsters that they will put an email in front of you or one of your team members. It looks to be a credentialed email, a trusted email. They're asking always to open a link or download. They're asking for you to do something. And then what most often they're asking to put user credentials in, login and password credentials. Ronnie, do you think is there anything else trending just in like, what's the point of the fish right now?
Yeah, so I would definitely say the account compromise is definitely one of the big ones right now. The other one is general business email compromise, where they will ask you to go and do an urgent wire transfer, or they may ask you to go and do a certain to go run a certain task. A lot of times, that task that they're going to send you on will involve them saying, "Hey, give me your cell phone number so I can text you." And they'll say, "I need you to go to this grocery store and go pick me up $500 in gift cards." What happens with that is those gift cards then get laundered on different cryptocurrency exchanges, where they can convert that gift card right over to Bitcoin. And they usually get about 70% of the face value on that. But with the way that Bitcoin is rising, we've seen upwards of like 10,000% rise of Bitcoin over the last couple of years.
Right.
So it's something where that little bit that the scammer is doing in order to get that Bitcoin, kind of thinking out long term and everything, they're actually going to be making a lot more money than just that $500 that they're taking. The unfortunate thing with that, and with a lot of way that works, is that once that money goes out, once that screenshot of that gift card has been sent, it's very difficult to nearly impossible to try and get that recovered. Because when it comes to working with the people who provides those gift cards, there really aren't any security protections in there once that money is out. So once they get that gift card and they convert to Bitcoin, it's gone. And it can happen within a matter of minutes that you lose your money on that.
So here's an example of what I believe was the fish, and you guys have probably seen this. This happened to be a spoof on First American, but I've seen it on almost every major underwriter in the last 4 months. Is that fair, Brent? I mean, it's been approaching all of our people.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do is, you've received an encrypted message. This looks like an underwriter alert. This looks like an updated CD. Maybe they referred you we just got a referral on a big commercial deal out of a California operation for one of our underwriters that's legitimate, but it came in, I believe, just like this. What I do is I forward it to Brent and I just put the word scam ? I don't open it. And I would just say that we'll talk more about this. If you're not expecting something or it's coming out of the blue, just don't click on it. It's just not worth it. So you can see here at the top that this is coming not from First Am, but gofmc.com. And this is going to be a redirect to harvest credentials. For those of you that are First American on the thing, not calling you guys out. Like I say, we've seen it from every major underwriter. This is just an example of a phishing email where they're trying to spoof a trusted brand. So what happened was, based on the information that we received, an escrow officer of a title company in our market here at Sun Title actually clicked on that, gave over user credentials, and then there was an account takeover, meaning that they actually gained access to the email server of that company into that account. And when you have that, now you're into a whole new realm of vulnerability of where they can go. So that was right around the end of the year. This was an end of the year transaction that needed to be funded. We had sent, so the setup was first a wire transfer fraud. They were trying to divert a wire that was going to be sent from this company over to us, I believe, right, Brent, on a split closing.
Right.
So what had happened is we had sent the correct wiring instructions, we meaning Sun Title, to the buyer and this title company. The buyer received it and acknowledged it, no problem. We had sent it through certified platform. The split company didn't receive it, so we didn't get confirmation. And hours later, they had received fraudulent instructions that looked like they were coming from Sun Title. And Brent, how were we notified of that specifically? Because I remember I was actually in Florida at the time and the red alert went off and we were triangulating what was going on. But how was it that we were notified?
Yeah, luckily for us, the modified wiring instructions were so bad. The graphics were so bad. The edited text was so obvious that the split title actually caught it. Split title company actually caught it. So we, we're very fortunate in that sense.
Got it. So it was a, hey, this isn't even close. And I'll show, I think we have an example in the deck of what those instructions look like. What we understand from there, so that was averted, thankfully. But what we understand is they received similar instructions from another company and actually wired against those to the tune of almost $800,000 into a fraudulent account.
Yeah.
Right. And this happened to be a commercial transaction, so the dollars were fairly large. And Brent, do we believe that those emails were initiated from their internal server?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just think about this, guys. And I don't mean to overcomplicate or rotate on the complexity of this, but this is why we're profiling this one. Your email is compromised because an employee gave up credentials. From within your email server, they create a spoofed identity of another title company to serve up fraudulent wiring instructions for you to act on, and it never left your email server environment. Do I have that right, Brent?
Yeah, they were, so they did some of that. They also had some rules in place on that mail system that diverted incoming mail from us, which is why the split title company never received our wiring instructions to begin with. They diverted that mail, they modified the wiring instructions, and then continued them on to the recipient after they've been modified. So they are sitting in the middle.
Ron, you're almost yawning at this point.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
This is new information for people. So is this, I mean, what do you have to add to this? Because to us, I have never seen this in the title space, but you see this all the time.
Yeah, so I think one of the most interesting things to add, and it's not necessarily that this is new, because these type of tactics have been around for years. It's something where we have to kind of change our perception on like what's something that's considered malicious. So for example, a lot of times you'll see something like a hospital that'll be hit with ransomware. It's like, oh, we need to go look at that. Or you may see something where, oh, this APT went and infected this one company and everything. But at the end of the day, it's something where you don't need this super duper ultra mega sophisticated Stuxnet in order to actually be successful in stealing money. At the end of the day, that's the goal of many of these attackers, is to get money. So if they can go ahead and go create this malware sample and have a bunch of researchers go and completely rip it to shreds and then try and complete and burn that infrastructure, what sounds easier? Sending an email saying, hey, I need you to do this invoice for me, and hey, I got $800,000, or spending all this time trying to develop a malware strain and develop this malware sample to hopefully get somebody to click on it when you have all these protections there. That's the reason that we're seeing a lot of this stuff rising, and it's rising at an alarming rate. And a lot of the reason is very much because of that perception that we need to go and focus on malware. But again, the problem isn't the malware side. It's all the things like the title companies, the real estates, romance victims, all of those people getting hit that's being used as part of the scheme. And that's where a lot of the money is being lost right now when you actually take that step back and look at the numbers.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you say, we're seeing it in massive spikes right now.
And so, Tom, if I can add one more piece, take back one slide. One piece I just wanted to add real quick on the timing of this. In past webinars, we've always talked about the pressure of end of the month and end of the year sort of things. And and how they try to insert some chaos into the transaction to make you rush or skip steps that are important, right? So if you look at this, sometime before 12/29, we don't know how long they were actually in this account, right? But they sat there until 12/29, when they either thought that they found something important or a transaction that they could take over. But 12/29 is end of the month, end of the year, end of the quarter, just before a holiday. People are off, they might be covering for each other, right? There's a lot of factors that play into just picking the date of the 29th as well.
Well, not only that, I agree with that, but particularly with the new administration and the idea of cap gains increasing, there was a surge of last minute commercial activity that people wanted to say, hey, I need to take advantage of what are probably the lowest rates that we're going to see in quite a while. So I appreciate you saying that. And they know that. That's the interesting thing about our business. They know all this stuff. They're not guessing that there's a pressure point the last day or day and a half of funding for the year to get it in before the New Year's bell. So, so the first half of this resulted, unfortunately, in a transfer to a fraudulent account. The next one was not only fascinating, but really concerning. And I'll set the stage by just asking a question. Have you ever thought about your ecosystem, or let's say split title companies, or your real estate agents, or your referral partners, even your customers, being able to expose you to direct liability because their email was compromised, right? So you might say, well, Tom, no, that's their fault. They're exposed. Well, here's what's interesting. After they came in and they diverted the wire, they ran a second incredibly strategic play out of that same email server. And what they did is they took the employee's email address and basically deal board, if you will. They could see all the emails. And they impersonated other trusted brands, including our brand, and sent spoofed emails and fraudulent wiring instructions to solicit active buyers and sellers to either receive or send money, particularly buyers, to send money to a fraudulent account that looked like it was coming from, let's say your brand. So your competitors hacked from that server. They're using that mail service to spoof you and put fraudulent instructions into buyers and lenders for upcoming closings that you're not even involved in. And many of you know, like say, I'm a recovering lawyer. That is a real problem for me. And it highlights the idea that these people, to Ronnie's point, however they can harvest the money, they're going to continue to run the play and leverage what they have, what resources are available to them. Ronnie was gracious enough to get involved along with the Secret Service to run this thing down. And this was a pretty significant breach that looks like it originated out of Eastern Europe and Russia. So Brent, I want to get into your head a little bit. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, fake wiring instructions, we see that frequently, unfortunately. We can't prevent from being spoofed. Yeah. But this was different. I mean, walk me through your thought when this kind of waterfall of information was being, as you kind of uncovered this.
Yeah, until you start digging into it, you don't know if you've been hacked or spoofed, right? So neither is good, but I would certainly pick spoof over being hacked. It brings a whole nother set of problems. So the first thing we do is we kind of have a playbook that we go out of. And one of the first immediate things is, okay, anyone involved, you're just immediately changing your passwords. Even if that's not a permanent solution, it might at least help stop some things while they're going on right now. Then we have to determine, did that mail actually leave our system, or are we being spoofed, right? So at this point on the 15th, when the messages are going out, the escrow officer on our side is receiving hundreds of undeliverable messages an hour, right? The message was poorly formed enough that spam filters are picking it up. A few got through to their endpoints, but I got a panicked call in the morning from this escrow officer saying, what the heck is going on? I'm getting all these undeliverable messages. I don't even know what this subject is, right? So in my head now I've got to figure out, okay, did we get hacked? Is the message actually leaving our system? Or did we get spoofed? Is it coming from somewhere else? And she's just getting all of the replies, right? So we start digging into the messages, start with a password reset, start with her Outlook specifically. Is there anything going on there? Any add-ons, any rules, anything like that that could do something like this? Then, you go to the next thing in line. We looked at our mail server. Is anything leaving our mail server? Is anything off? Is the rate of mail not normal for our sort of business on this day? We use Mimecast as our inbound and outbound spam filter archiving, email security solution. So then we go to Mimecast. What mail is going out of Mimecast? Is anything going from her? Anything leaving with this subject? Thankfully, after running all that down, we were not able to find any of the information, that was getting bounced back to her. We were able to determine that none of it was leaving any of our systems anywhere. Website wasn't hacked, mail system wasn't hacked. Anything that could possibly send mail seemed to be fine. Nothing was leaving our systems. So then, we have to do, further diagnosis, and we started noticing that a lot of the communication that was going on, the contacts involved, some of the wording kind of hinted back to the transaction and the attack from the 29th, right? So then we immediately have to run out and contact the IT departments of the split title company and start running it down with them. To our luck, they had been seeing the exact same things that we did that morning. So then it comes down to working together with them. We need to get messaging out, right? A spoofing attack, you can't always just shut down yourself. That's the downside of a spoof attack, is they're doing it, they could be doing it from your mail server, like what's happening in this case, which they were eventually able to shut down. It could be happening from a third party. Spoofing attacks are much more difficult to shut down, but at least at this point, we knew that we were not hacked. We were being spoofed, and we set some filters in place to just delete those messages while we triage the real situation.
I think the other interesting thing too on spoofing attacks is that they're very difficult to see as well from either angle. And Thomas, I know you were mentioning you were a lawyer and stuff and whatnot, but one of the biggest problems I've had, and this is something that's been brought up to me multiple times, is trying to figure who the responsible party is. Was it something where the responsible party was the one who had their email account hacked? Was it the person who was the one who wired the money? So from a legal perspective, a lot of this stuff, a lot of these crimes are still very new. So it's something where we're all still trying to figure a lot of this stuff out, unfortunately, and everything. And it's something where as we go and unpack a lot of this stuff, we're even to this day, we're still trying to figure out which party is the one who's going to be responsible, who's going to pay that money and stuff and whatnot. Because the bank's not going to want to pay it. The victims aren't going to want to pay it because they're victims too. So it really, really becomes difficult, and it's better to just be aware of it, to not put yourself in that sticky situation and have a 2-year legal battle going on because someone popped an email account.
Yeah. Well, it is hard because of the texture involved. Is it the best practice because I'm sending money and I should verify? Is it, hey, if you wouldn't have got hacked, then I wouldn't have sent money to a fraudulent account, but yet the person that got hacked didn't do it intentionally? So you're exactly right. I mean, we published a white paper on this in real estate. And unfortunately, Ronnie, I hate to say this, but if you're not battling over $250,000 or more, it's just going to settle. You just can't go the distance because between the federal and the case law and just how thin this is right now and how complex, a lot of people, it's just not worth going the distance. I will say this, the banks are very clear that if you initiate a wire and you have authority under the account to initiate the wire, they're not responsible for where it goes. They don't have to lift a finger to help you get the money back. And they will time and time again cite UCC 4A to say, I met my obligation. So you were in the best position to protect yourselves and your customer. Don't come crying to me when you ask me to send your money to a fraudulent account. And that's the unfortunate piece of it, but it's true. All right, moving along, just in the interest of time here. So we did receive notice, just so for an example, I mean, we did receive kind of a real-time feed on that January, don't open, it looks like it was hacked. please see the closing instructions. So this is what the email, Brent, looked like, correct? As it was coming into, and then somebody, you can see we masked it for identity, but like, what's this? I'm not involved in a transaction. There's no transaction details. Why are you sending me wiring instructions? And again, you know, this is upsetting to me and it's upsetting to Brent and everybody because we didn't do anything wrong, right? We had somebody in our market that was compromised, and now we're spending the better part of 2 days unraveling and messaging just to make sure that nobody got harmed.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not only the right thing to do, but what you have to do. And then a notice that went out after on the fact that, look, this is what happened, and you have to notice under federal and state rules when you're advised of a breach. These were the crappy wiring instructions. What's interesting about this, and I don't have it in a slide to show you because this is a PDF, is we have now seen multiple instances where the fraudsters are sending one PDF that have multiple, when I say multiple, 60, 70, 80 different accounts and headers. I got one yesterday that must have been over 100 title company headers and different accounts that were sent through a wire fraud that the buyer wired $69,000 on.
And,
so,
and the interesting piece with that too, is that not only like with this example, the way it's hard, you can kind of see a little bit from the screenshot, but the little grayed out pieces and everything, that's the extra text. So if you actually hit Control A on that, it'll light up like a Christmas tree. You'll have blocks that just aren't lined up and everything. In addition to that, this multiple actors are doing this because we've had cases where they don't simply just cascade the text on top of each other. They'll actually cascade PDF on PDF on PDF. And I've actually written scripts that will go back and extract all of those raw PDFs and everything forensically in order to kind of carve that information out. And we've seen cases where I've had 48 PDFs or like 60 other PDFs that I was able to extract. And to put that into context, that's 60 other victims who were gotten hit with this stuff. When you see the wiring instructions for 100 accounts, like you had mentioned, that's 100 other victims that got hit. So it's something where when you guys see this stuff, you are not the only person seeing this. It's something where it's a very widespread problem, and a lot of people are getting hit. And again, just if you see something, say something, speak up, because again, everyone is seeing this, everybody's getting hit with this, and everybody's getting hammered with it.
Yeah, Ronnie, you and I worked a PDF late last fall. Secret Service confirmed 65 or 68 active mule accounts with money in them from people that had been defrauded, right? Just in one single document. It's absolutely amazing. So, the result, numerous consumers and other title companies at risk. What's next? This is my concern, is that what's the tail on things like this as they happen, right? It's not coincidence. So, is there another round coming? I don't know. What happens to all of the email accounts and the identities of people that are clearly in the real estate market? The theft of personally identifiable information that could have come off of closing disclosures or 1003s or 1099s, resolutions. I mean, just think about it, guys. All the information that we're passing to meet all of our underwriter and IRS and Patriot Act and other requirements to close a deal. The diversion of transaction level information, and then just, like us, that, it looks like they work with Sun or they work with, Acme Title or whoever down the road, that's the concern. So why did it happen? I'm going to walk through this quickly, but I'm going to step into the room in just a minute. So I'm going to have Nick advance slides going forward, Brent. I want to make sure that I'm queued up for the next talk, but everything that we've seen starts with some well-crafted fish. And what we've seen is the fraudsters are moving in real time, and they seem to be, and Ronnie, you'll know this more, but they seem to be just looking at what we're searching for on Google, like what's trending. And then all of a sudden they'll just pop a spoof in their employee benefits. It started with COVID, and then PPE, and then PPP, and then unemployment, and then vaccine. And now I'll show you a tax return because it's tax season. And then employee benefits are moving back around with like CARES Act V2 that's about ready to get passed. So Ronnie, what can you say about just the timeliness of, and this isn't the Nigerian print scams anymore. This just seems like super relevant as they come in.
Yeah, and that's very much what it is a lot of the times these scammers are figuring out that if they make it more timely, more relevant, then that person is more likely to click on that and everything. On the W-2 side, we actually had one actor that we were looking at that was dealing in the market of W-2 information. And they actually ended up and from the communications that we saw, they actually went to a certain place in Nigeria to make an in-person cash exchange for like 100 W-2s in order to use that to file with the IRS and everything. So it's like once and a lot of the way that those ones play out is your actor will say, hey, I need all these W-2s for 2019 or what's going to be happening. You mark my words. You can write this down. You can go ahead and quote me on this, put this anywhere that you see. We will be seeing phishing emails for 2020 where they say, hey, I need all the tax returns for 2020. And it's just something where this is that cycle where they're going to come back around and start trying to get that information. Because again, that's one of those things that they can use that in order to continue stealing more funds.
My wife called me in a panic about an hour and a half ago this morning. I didn't tell you this, Brent. And she said, the IRS just called and they said that my social security number is suspended because of identity theft and they want me to call her number back. And I'm like, no. She's like, no, really, it sounded really legitimate. I'm like, all right, what's the number? So she looked at it. It was like 616-634, which is a Verizon cell phone sequence. I'm like, no way. I'll flip it to the FTC and we'll burn the number. But again, like you just can't fall victim. I mean, right? If the IRS wants to get in contact with you, a black Suburban will show up to your door, right? Or certified mail or a court processor. It's not going to come in like this, right? They may be the friendlier version of the IRS in recent years, but not that friendly. You just got to shut it down. Same thing with Social Security Administration or anything coming out of the blue. Not that they don't care, but they just don't have time to care at that level.
Right. Same with Microsoft and tech support scams and all those other things too. They don't have time. Microsoft does not have a time to call and say, "Hey, I need $200 on the gift card." It also similar tactics.
Right.
All right, we're going to pivot. This is my last slide, and then I'm going to hand it over to Nick and you guys to round out on the email security piece. But guys, real estate specific, title specific, okay? Just think, I have seen every single vector of this coming into my Sun Title email over the last 6 weeks. Underwriter alerts, some type of transaction update. It could be a referral on a transaction or whatever. Updated wiring instructions, got to be a hard stop. Requesting more information on something. It could be like Ronnie said, hey, I need tax information. Hey, there was an escrow audit. I need more information. Again, updated anything in the file, new order requests, or even final policy requests are going to start to come in because they know that, again, they just know, who's been issuing final policies other than short forms as busy as we were. Sorry, the underwriters can close their ears. Nobody has. Right? Absolutely nobody. And we got to get to that this year. But know that you just have to be on the lookout and train your people up on this on a regular basis, or what we described earlier could happen. I got one yesterday from another underwriter, and I immediately sent it to the CISO of that company saying, you gotta alert this countrywide if this thing's going around the country because people are going to click on this. It was very well done. All right, guys, we're going to look into how to lower the risk around email security. I'm going to sign off here. Again, Nick's going to take over and advance the slide. So Brent, if you guys could just say next slide and make sure that let's keep this conversational on track to end in about 20 minutes. Please, everyone, fill out the survey at the end so that we can give feedback to Ronnie for his time. And Ronnie, I want to thank you in advance. I apologize, I'm double booked. But we want to make next month's even as impactful as this month. So with that, I'm going to let Nick run. Brent, maybe you can just walk through real quick the alignment of people, process, and technology, and we'll walk through the advancement of the rest of the slides. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so how do you stop this stuff, right? How do you get in front of it? How are you just not reactive all the time? We like to always talk about this people, process, and technology, and the arrow obviously points right to the middle there. By being able to kind of marry all of those pieces together and come up with this perfect middle solution. It's a lot of it, I think we're seeing right now are people, especially on our end, making sure people don't click on bad links, making sure that you have a good relationship with your tech staff, right? If they do click on a bad link, are they going to be so scared that they're not going to actually go to the IT staff? They're just going to sit on it and hope, that nothing happened. What processes are you putting in place so that if something does happen, you have a fallback plan, right? And then technology, as simple as, well, what can I put in place to make sure that people are not getting those bad links or bad attachments, just in a simple example. Or technology that if something does happen, how would I be able to track that down and make sure that we didn't get hacked, or, it's just spoofed, or I can shut down an attack like this if something happens, right? It's kind of both, incoming and outgoing. Go ahead and go to the next one. So then I think, multi-factor authentication is obviously a big one. We like to use the Google example because it's one of the easiest ones to set up, and we know a lot of people use Gmail. Gmail is good about adding the security, but if you're an agent or somebody who can use your corporate mail, that's obviously much more highly recommended than using a Gmail account. But most of the free email accounts out there will let you do some sort of two-factor authentication. And there's various methods to that, whether it's sending a code to a cell phone, or a better solution is using the actual authenticator apps. Google makes one, Microsoft makes one. There's a few different ones out there. Having some sort of password manager to manage your passwords. Google, for example, in this slide has got a spot right within their security settings to go turn this on very easily, and they walk you through it. It takes about 2 minutes. It's very, very easy. On the corporate side, with corporate mail, you need to talk to your IT departments. Sometimes it can be a little more complex to set that sort of thing up, but regardless, it's always a good idea. Even if someone gets your username and password, they enter it in, they're going to get hit with this two-factor piece that they're just not going to have. The other piece to this is that if you're suddenly getting all sorts of two-factor authentication alerts, that might be a red flag that someone's trying to access your account, right? And now you can take other steps to kind of thwart that too. And I don't know, Ronnie, if you have anything to add here, obviously, feel free.
Yeah, I would say one of the alerts that we used to have back in the defense industrial race days was looking for verifications where a password attempt was attempted, but the PIN was invalid. So it's something where if you have two-factor authentication enabled on this, you should be able to see that on your back end where the attempts are being made. A lot of the way that accounts are being compromised these days is through different levels of credential stuffing, where your password may be leaked on some other website, and that same password was reused for something else. So one great example of that was when Disney Plus went live. Like, I think it was something like between like 20 and 40% of those accounts were compromised within like the first week. Again, that was purely because of password reuse. So using something like a password safe, or simply writing your password down, where we say don't do that, but at this point it's okay. But using those things to help with the password and ensure that you're not using the same password across services, that will help protect against if some other website gets popped, then you're going to go ahead and your data will be safe, because unfortunately that's where we are right now. Is the security of somebody else also matters to your company too. So when you go and look at it forensically, it may be one of those cases where there may be no logs. You may not be able to find the initial phish, but may have been some other database that was hacked 2 years ago. But because your password was reused, then that password can be used in order to get into your system as well. And places like Have I Been Pwned are great areas to put your email account in to see if any other services have been compromised that list that account and everything. So definitely check, put your password in there to Have I Been Owned, or not your password, rather your email account, to see if your email account has been in any other breaches. And it's a free way to do it. Just go search there, and it's good to keep updated with the breaches that happen in the world.
And by using a new fresh password for every account doesn't mean advancing the symbol up the keyboard either. Come up with a legitimate fresh password for every account. All right, go ahead, go to the next slide.
And also with the passwords, a lot of password safes will actually randomize that password. So
Yeah.
once you're using them, you don't have to worry about like, okay, I need Red Dog 3, I need Blue Cat 42, I need Red Hat Hut Hut Hike and everything. So it's something where
Right.
your password generator will automatically take care of that and make it to where it's just a random string of characters.
Yep. And use a high number of characters. Don't stick at the 8, the 10, the 12. Go up to 25 characters or more. There's no reason not to if it's remembering it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think on this slide, this is something that we have caught on a few different attacks in the past as well, where the mail is being diverted, kind of like in this example. You can actually go in either to Outlook or in this case, with this example, Gmail, and look and see. It'll show you if your mail is being forwarded somewhere. Sometimes it's something you do if you're forwarding your own mail to another account. Other times, if someone actually does get access to your account, they will set up a rule like this, hoping that you don't find it, and they will divert your mail somewhere else, send copies off so that they can keep analyzing things. It's a very easy and straightforward way for them to divert your mail so that you're not seeing certain things. Yep, going right in there, setting the forwarding address, and then proceeding. And they can do this without you knowing. If this isn't something that you check on a regular basis, it could go on for months without you having any idea of where your mail's going. Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and kind of start walking through some of the things that we're doing on the active defense side in order to just understand what this is and kind of all the areas that we're looking at and everything. So one of the things I would like to say, just when talking about business email compromise, as this grows and as this progresses, it's something where it's not one problem, if you will. It's a more of a longer standing issue, and business email compromise is just a symptom of a longer standing issue that's been going on. So one of the things that we do on a daily basis at Agari is we will engage with different actors and we will try and get as much information out of them as we can. And the reason we do that is because it's kind of like where we're able to start turning the tides back on them and start socially engineering them back. And the reason for that is because when they say, hey, I'm looking for this wire transfer, and we say, why, yes, we have that wire transfer for you. We'll be happy to do that transfer for you. They will give bank accounts. And as you go ahead and continue that conversation, they will just start passing you more and more and more data. So to put that into perspective, some of the numbers that we've had, so we started this back in May 2019, once we officially kicked this off. And throughout that, we've done over 13,000 engagements, and that's over 13,000 threads of emails going back with different actors. We've gotten a great understanding of how this BEC ecosystem works. And one of the things that we do is we'll also collaborate with law enforcement and other private sectors in order to just get ahead of this stuff. And it's something where the analogy I like to give is that when it comes to fighting BEC, everybody sees it in a different way. So for example, I may see like the joist of a house. The people on the real estate side, you guys may see the ATO. So you guys may see like some of the shingles on the roof and everything. Your romance victim may represent like a couple bricks on the side of the house, or another email security vendor may see the malware side of BEC. But it's only once we all start coming together to understand that's when we can kind of start figuring out how this stuff works. And you can go ahead and move to the next slide if you want. But that's one of the things that we do is we work really closely with a lot of these vendors and a lot of other organizations in order just to understand this problem. And that's one of the things that we help provide and everything is we try and provide that insight and that value that, yes, here's how it works. And by understanding that, that's how we can help put those recommendations in to say, you have to go this direction, that direction, or here's where your protections need a little bit more extra work and everything. And that's one of the things that we try to do is we also help mitigate that risk, help manage that risk, and help people understand just how this business email compromise thing works. And can you go ahead and go to the next slide? And just by using that level of understanding, it's something where we're able to kind of see how that goes. So a lot of people are like, active defense, it's a buzzword, you're hacking people. And a lot of organizations, a lot of companies just throw it around and everything. But that's not necessarily how it works. It's something where it's very simple. And honestly, anybody who receives these emails can do it. So what happens is when with these fake accounts, we'll see the actors sending in the phishing email. And what we do is we simply do that. We just respond back to them. And based on some of the stuff that we're also an email securities provider. So we also provide security around different email gateways, and we provide different feedback around that. So what we'll do is, with all that intelligence that we now have an automated process that we can kind of start understanding how the attackers work and then start re-engaging with them. The interesting thing is, I kind of mentioned this earlier, where with specific to the documents and the bank accounts, I said that it's something where if you're being targeted, you aren't the only person being targeted by this stuff. We've actually done studies and had and just looked at our intelligence. We've seen upwards of when an actor is engaging with one person, we've seen instances where they may go and fish 200 different companies per day, just cranking right through. One of the actors that we were looking at, it was literally his full-time job. For 8 to 9 hours a day, he was the one who would just send email. So he would send email, send, email, send, email, send. And a lot of times, a lot of the scammers, you would especially on like the Russian side of things, you would think that they would automate a lot of this stuff. However, when you go and start studying BEC, when you go start digging into how they're doing it, when you go start looking at the automation, if you will, much of this stuff is unfortunately meat powered. So it's something where your scammers are actually the ones who are sending a lot of these things one by one. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? And it's something where when it comes to responding back to those people, we have a very high success rate, and it's upwards of about 70% chance that they'll say, yes, I'm here, I'll go ahead and do that transfer for you. The other reason that we like to do it is kind of the greater good piece, if you will, is that when it comes to working with these people, if they're trying to send that email to 200 people and they have one response come back, they will stop what they're doing, go and take the time in order to start focusing on that one person who responded. And if you're wasting their time, and if you're running them at that point, that's time that they're not spending hitting 50 other people. That's time they're not spending social engineering a romance victim. That's time they're not spending hitting somebody else and wiring more money out. So if you can start cutting off that chain of thought for them and divert their attention to elsewhere, there's a lot of success for that. And some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we pushed out, we have a BEC Global Insights report where we look at this stuff from a global perspective. For some of the numbers that have come out through IC3, I think it was their 2019 report, and it was something like 90% of the globe, it was like 170 countries have had fraud related to business email compromise as being reported. Through some of our collections, we've also found that other things like check fraud, romance scams, money laundering, carding, account takeovers, which is the main topic for this and everything, document forging. We've seen them targeting BDSM dating websites. I mean, the entire gamut and spectrum that they go in order to target these victims is extremely broad. So they will literally go and target anybody that they can in order to try and get money for a lot of this stuff. And through some of the active defense side, we also will do we will also provide organizational specific intelligence based on some of the things that you see targeting your institutions. Can you go ahead and go to the next page? So one of the things that we're also looking at credential phishing and credential harvesting to try and understand how this stuff works. We're trying to understand, okay, once the attacker gets that credential, what do they do? So what we're doing, and this is one of the projects that we've been kicking off, and it's kind of still very much in beta right now, but what we're doing is we will go and we have an instance that we can go and start seeding phishing credentials into these phishing websites. So now when the attacker gets that credential, they'll come in and they'll log in. And once they log in, we capture the user agent strings, we capture the IP addresses, we know the VPNs where they're clicking from, we know the systems that they're clicking from, and we're taking that information and we're harvesting that. And in a lot of cases now, we're able to actually tie the actor that logs in with that credential back to a specific phishing kit. And we've also had instances where when our credentials get leaked in multiple phishing kits, we'll have the same IP address that will pop back up. So now we're in a position where we're able to start seeing and mapping out that, okay, for this account takeover, you may have these five domains that weren't related that have all of these that on the phishing kit side that have these email accounts that aren't related, but these credentials that were used all use the same IP address to log in. They all use the same user agent string, so more than likely it's going to be your actor. So now our next stage is to start figuring out how is that all related? Who's the ones clicking on that? Are there groups who are working with that? Was our credential sold on an underground forum and everything? So that's something that we're looking to build out here in the next couple of months, is just that understanding from the account takeover side of what happens afterward and what insights can we go ahead and provide back to
And this
the
is
world
so cool because it's on the offense side, and now you're fishing the fishers, and you're throwing their own tactics right back in their face, and they're falling for them. And that's it's awesome from a an offense standpoint.
Yeah, and some of the more fun things we've gotten to do, and this is research that we haven't really published before, but when it comes to like W-2 fraud, it's something where they'll ask for W-2 information, and then what we do is I actually have a script that will fake a W-2 going back to the scammers. So I have a whole listing of some 2,000 social security numbers that are absolutely fake, that have been faked, that can now be used to track on the back end and see where's this stuff going. And it's like, I've been doing this for the last year. So now I have different things that I can use to track that. And it's something where if those fake credentials pop up, I can then tie that back to a specific campaign, to a specific incident where that one document was leaked out and everything. So now the scammer, whenever if we decide to go public on this and stuff, it's something where we're now in the position where we could be like, hey, scammers, there's a bunch of seeded credentials, and we socially engineered you guys a year ago. And that's also another funny story too, is and I initially got the idea because in one of our collections we saw another security company doing it, and they had leaked their own information. So we went back to them, we were like, hey, your information was leaked and everything. They're like, no, it's not, go back and check the number. So we went back and checked them, they were forging it too. So we kind of tip our hat to that security vendor that I'm not going to name, but it's something where this wasn't our idea initially, but it's something where it's really cool kind of seeing that holistic approach going, where they had seen that information. We saw it actually getting purchased in Nigeria. And then we saw the communications where the scammer group was yelling back and forth at each other. It's like, dude, your guy sucks. He gave us this bad information, this bad intelligence. It's all fake data and whatnot. I'm sitting there, I'm like, that made it all the way through that chain just because this person faked that information over here. I'm like, we're gonna burn them. So it's something where we started doing that as well, because again, it now gets into that social engineering aspect and starts getting in their heads where they're like, oh, there's all this fake information out there. Which piece is real, which piece isn't? And again, if you can craft it and if you could forge things in a way to where it seems more enticing, there's something where you'll be able to understand that. We've also done similar on the aging report side, where we will go and create fake aging reports, and we'll seed our own account information in there. So what an aging report is for a vendor who owes somebody money. It's a document that says, okay, you have 30, 60, 90 days. Here's the balance that you have to owe this person. And what the scammers will do is they'll go and create a lookalike. Once they get that aging report, they'll go create a lookalike domain impersonating your company. And that's the end that you see from that and everything from from that side. But they'll go create that lookalike domain and start attacking your vendors, pretending to be you and everything. So one of the things that we've done on the active defense side is we've actually crafted scripts in order to go and seed our fake information. And by doing that, we've actually had the scammers create lookalike domains of our fake accounts to go and fish our vendors and our clients and our customers, which are actually accounts and credentials that we have and that are under our control. So now we're able to see that whole picture and understand how that works now that we've had them in that box, if you will, to be able to kind of push them and just see how that stuff works and everything.
Love to throw back in their face.
Oh yeah, and it's something where and again, when you actually look at the legal side of it and everything, there's no legal ramifications of it. It's I'm responding back to an email. That person responded back to an email. I'm not using malware. I'm not doing anything like that. I mean, there's no legal gotchas with it. So it's something where the more that you start understanding how that stuff works, we're now able to start putting those protections back into things to start figuring out how a lot of the stuff works. And again, by attacking that human aspect of it, it's something where we can start understanding a lot of how this stuff works.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely fun stuff. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? Okay, so I'll kind of go over this one really quick and everything. But again, I kind of mentioned other flavors of business email compromise. One of the things that we saw was we also saw scammers targeting COVID relief funds and different pandemic money, which again tied back to one of the BEC groups that we've been tracking for several years. And what they did was that group would usually go and do romance scams and business email compromise and gift card fraud, and then they eventually went and switched their tactics to go and target the pandemic funds. The running a task, I also mentioned that one earlier, where they may say, hey, give me your, I need you to go get a gift card. And there was also another instance where I've also kind of mentioned this too, but romance victims play a very key role in this. And what their role is, they're socially engineered to giving their accounts over to the scammers. And they're actually used as money mules. And one case that we had saw was with an individual in Beaumont, Texas, that the headline's gonna sound horrible, but he had wired over $100,000 in fraud or $100,000 in laundered money back to the scammers, with one of those cases being from the United Methodist Church and 3 other companies. But that was something where we had seen the chatter on that from our data collection. And that individual actually was very much a romance victim, had no idea what he was doing. And he even had and all the way to give you an idea of how indoctrinated he was into the scam. He was sending pictures of his food, and he actually had clothing preferences for Peggy, who he thought I was in a relationship with. He had clothing preferences for what she was wearing. And for him, he lived in a more rural area. And it was one of those things where, because he lived in a more rural area, he preferred the less formal version of Peggy as opposed to the more gussied up and formal version. And again, that's how deep a lot of these scammers are able to get the romance victim and to psychologically manipulate them into thinking, no, I'm actually this person that we say.
Well, you mentioned it earlier too, like these are actual people on the other end, right? There's this misconception that it's just bots sitting out there sending these messages, and then maybe someone will get involved if you happen to click on a link. But what most people don't realize is there is another person on the end of most of these actually sending you the information, waiting for the reply. And it makes it infinitely more scary.
Yeah, and to add to that scariness too, that person on the other end is using voodoo and money rituals in order to bless their earnings to continue stealing from the victims over here. And again, that's probably going to sound completely out of left field, but if you go and start doing searches on money rituals in Nigeria, you'll get to some pretty dark places on the internet, including where two scammers murdered their grandmother as part of one of these rituals. So it's something where, unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation, is that it now becomes an ideology fight as well in order to kind of address this and everything. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? So I know that's a lot of information that we covered and everything, but I really kind of wanted to repeat, and I know this is going to be repeating some of the things, but make sure that you enable 2-factor and 2-step authentication yesterday. It's something where that's a very simple thing. And again, if a scammer gets your password, it's a nice protection to kind of help you with that. There are cases where scammers are using phishing kits that have 2-factor authentication enabled to where they can siphon that stuff, but it's something where that is not mainstream yet, but it's something where that is there. Also, make sure to audit your email forward rules, and just do it for all your users. And when you do this, do that before your password reset, because once you go and do that password reset, if that email forward rule is in there, that's persistence, and they're still able to siphon your email account. So that password reset does nothing because they're still getting your emails and everything. And when they get that chain, they'll actually go and forward that email back to you, or they'll go and be able to forward that email back into the chain and still do it again, even after you reset that password and everything. And also constantly check your own accounts to make sure that was in there too. I also mentioned password safes, but password safes, it's something where, unfortunately, the reality of this is that with credential stuffing, with credential harvesting, there's so many instances where people will just reuse their password and everything in order to kind of do that. There are enterprise vaults where you can actually have a password for your team or for your enterprise where everyone uses a password safe. So look into stuff like that. Personally, I use LastLine just because that was something where I'm able to share my accounts with my wife. So if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, she's not going to be lost with over 200 of passwords I have spread across the internet.
Of course, we don't hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Hope not either. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? And then and then just one of the last things I want to cover is more free stuff. Make sure that you implement DMARC. DMARC is a technology that Agari helped spearhead going back about 10 years ago. And what it is it's an email security solution that helps protect against spoofed emails. And the way it works is it's a small record that you put in your DNS records in order to help protect from people trying to spoof your company. It's something where if you're using Gmail accounts, or if you're like a small provider that doesn't have access to your own .com, it's something where that may not necessarily apply to you. But if it's something where if you do have your own .com, it's a very good thing to implement. It shouldn't take too long to implement that. It'll take a little bit of research to make sure that it's all set up and configured right. But it's something where it's a very good low bar to hit and everything in order to help out. The second thing, double, triple, quadruple, septuple check your processes and procedures, because most of the BECs I've seen over the last 6 years is it's not necessarily somebody socially engineering something per se. It's which is the root of how all this happens. But a lot of the times it comes down to a process that was broken down. It was just because somebody didn't pick up the phone and take the 30 seconds to be like, hey, did you really send this over to me? And when you do make that phone call, use known numbers that you've already talked to that person with, because in the email bodies under the signatures, scammers will actually put new phone numbers in there. And I actually had one case going back a year or so ago where it was like a handwritten document that ended up getting sent as part of the wire transfer. And the only thing that referenced back from the company to the actual email, the last digit ended in 7. Whereas when you go look the company up, the last digit ended in 9. So they're going that far to understand where the zip code is or where the phone number is in order to spoof that, so that when you pick up that phone, you can call that and everything.
Well, I think it's important too, having, knowing that there are actual people on the other end. They're learning as we are, right?
Yeah.
They're figuring out those processes, and then as we adapt, they adapt and they change their tactics. I mean, it's sad, but we see changes all the time.
Yeah, and like a great example of that would be going back 5 years ago. This all used to be wire transfers. Now we're starting to see shifting to other digital currencies. We've seen a rise in Bitcoin. We've seen them asking for gift cards as part of transfers. We've seen them using Alipay, PayPal. One of the new hot ones that's come up is Cash App. And where we see Cash App is typically with your romance victims, because with Cash App, if you get money into your account, you can immediately buy Bitcoin and then send that off and everything. And I've personally used that, and it's extremely quick. And just from my personal experience, I can have cash to somebody in Nigeria in 30 minutes simply by using Cash App to Bitcoin to send and everything. And it's something where the guy who's saying don't send stuff to Nigeria, saying he's bought stuff, he's paid people in Nigeria, may sound odd, but that's other stuff, the other projects that we've got in the works and everything.
Right.
One of the last areas to kind of make sure to look for is if it looks odd, just ask and update your email signatures. You don't have to say, I sent this from Ronnie's iPhone, or I sent this from Ronnie's Samsung device, everything. Just modify that in your account, make it to where that's in there. Just send it. It's something where you, just because you're lazy and say this was sent from my iPhone, that's the exact same thing scammers use. And they use that as a way to give the perception that they're in the middle of a meeting and can't do anything else. So just take the time to update your email signatures and say, no, I'm actually not on mobile, and just update that.
Here's an excuse of why my grammar is off, or may not sound like my normal self.
Yeah, and it's something where it's like, even when you type and everything, it might be a little off and everything, but it won't be Nigerian English off and everything. So seriously, take like the 30 seconds, put that signature on there.
Yeah,
that's it. So I was gonna say, pass it back to you, Brent.
Yeah, love it. No, if you can go to the next slide, I think that kind of rounds us out. And obviously, we've got the connection info up here. Feel free to reach out to Tom. Feel free to reach out to Ronnie. If you've got any additional questions that we can answer, we're happy to reach out. It's really important stuff. And as Tom said earlier, please fill out that survey. It helps us helps us design the next series of webinars. It helps us, provide better feedback to people, open up avenues that maybe we don't know you're dealing with. We really do read those, surveys, and we really do value the feedback. So please consider filling that out. I think that's all we've got today, so we can wrap this thing up. And
I was gonna say, Brett, there were a couple questions that came in. If we want
there
to
were.
roll through
Okay.
those real quick. Yeah. So do you want me to repeat them off or?
Yeah, go ahead if you've got them up there.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and say these, but I think we kind of covered them. So the first question, can Tom restate how it happened again? Steps on how fraud occurs with the email server. So can you walk back through that just to kind of recap some of the highlights on how that server had gotten popped?
Yeah, so this one was an actual hack, right? We talked about hacks versus spoofs. This was an actual hack. So the person at the split title company did fall for the typical phishing email, clicked a bad link, and entered some bad credentials, and then they actually gained access to his real corporate account. Right. In this case, it wasn't a Gmail account; it was a real corporate account for the title company. And they did, where we showed you setting up the rules, they went into this particular mail system and set up rules so that they could sit between any mail coming in or going out and this person, right? So they sat in, they watched the email that we sent to the title company, they stopped it, made the modifications to the wire instructions, and then passed it on to the split title company, right? So they sat right in the middle, intercepting that mail. So this was an actual hack and not just a spoof. Whereas if it was a spoof, they wouldn't have had access to the actual mail system and could not have sat in between us and the other person. They would have just spoofed things back and forth, hoping that we didn't catch it.
Awesome, thank you. And then another question. This is more a note from Michelle. Additional breakdown is the lack of re-verification of wiring instructions and or changes in the wiring instruction by title companies or settlement agents. And kind of going back to the one point I made about processes, that's one of the reasons I really harp on making sure that your processes are there and having processes and procedures that are implemented and followed. Like I said, a lot of times when I see a BEC attack, it's not necessarily, oh, I wired this money out. It's because there's a process or a procedure that fell down. And by simply following your own processes that you define to protect fraud, will ironically stop a lot of this stuff or ironically prevent a lot of this. So if you follow
people are afraid to hit that pause button too, when something happens, it's okay to pause. If it is a real hacker, fraudster, some sort of attacker, right, they're going to try to keep that pressure on. So pausing, is actually a good thing. It's okay to throw the red flag and make the phone call with a number that and actually verify the wire instructions in person or over the phone or using some other method than just email. People, panic that that's not okay, and that can save a transaction.
Yeah, and it's something where with a lot of these transactions, the world is not going to burn if you wait a day or two to send that money, because a lot of these implementations are made to where you have like a week's leeway, or so in some cases 2 to 3 weeks before it's like, okay, this deadline actually has to be met. So it's something where if you seriously take that pause, take that step back and look at it again, it's something where a lot of times just taking that little pause helps you see, okay, this is fishy, or this thing isn't something we should do.
Just consider the ramifications if you don't. It's a lot worse if you wire those funds to a bad account.
Yeah, because what happened?
Brett, I think you were searching for a word. Oh, can you hear me, Ronnie?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, the word you were searching for. Yeah, the word you were searching for, Brent, is certified, right?
Yes, exactly.
You got to use other technology. No, but use of the word kindly, any updated mortgage payoff that you're not expecting. I mean, you just, to Ronnie's point, add a few days of interest and just have the process, have an override that if something does change, you get a second set of eyes on it. Because, I mean, I was just on with the director of the Secret Service. I had to step out, and we're back. And I mean, this is a national security issue. He was throwing some numbers out that were absolutely insane on what is actually leaving the country right now on these scams. Just huge issue.
And I know what number, if it's the number that I think that the rumor is going around, I know what number that is. And yes, just yes. That's all I'm going to say. Yes.
Big number.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big.
Yes. Staggering. Yes. Big.
And that's, and
All right.
that
What other
is,
questions do we have? Do we talk about?
I was gonna say, with that number, that's not
Go ahead.
us exaggerating either. It's gonna be bad when that number comes public. So it's, yeah, bad.
All right, Ronnie, did we talk about chicken blood, voodoo, cash? Did we talk about the ideology? I want to end with that because that's something that is, I think, trending right now as we learn more about the inner workings of these networks globally. So if you haven't touched on that in maybe 60 seconds.
So I kind of mentioned it, but are you seriously trying to have me just traumatize everybody on this call, man? So so kind of digging into the ideology of it, I kind of mentioned a little bit and everything. With the romance victims, you do have cases where, a lot of cases rather, where voodoo is something that a lot of these scammers believe that they can use in order to bless their earnings. And the way it works is you can go and bring you could do different sacrifices, pay money to your native doctor in order to get that in order to get the blessing to continue doing more fraud. In many cases on the ground, the scammers are called Yahoo boys. In order to kind of get that next level of blessing to become a Yahoo boy plus, you can actually do rituals that include human sacrifices. So there's actually very many documented instances where there was one case where someone went to go murder their own grandmother in order to be used as part of the scams. There were cases where women will be brought into it and they'll kind of come in as being enticed by the money. And then they get abused to the point where they actually start going mad, is how they call it, or absolutely crazy. About 2 weeks ago, one of my wonderful fun things I got to study, because I kind of mentioned I get to look at all these wonderful things so you guys don't have to. It was a ritual that they were doing with a native doctor in what looked like to be a club. And in that club, it was about seven people in a circle with a bunch of people on the outside. And as part of that ritual, they were actually eating a live chicken. So they're sitting there dancing around. You see everything as they're sitting there eating the chicken as part of this blessing, as part of this voodoo ritual. There's cases where you'll have Yahoo boys walking down the street eating feces. You'll have cases where you'll have severed heads and corpses in the middle of the road and everything. I was talking with one of my contacts out in Nigeria the other day, and he was saying, yeah, I couldn't go out because a couple of Yahoo boys were arguing over a girl. 2 people got murdered, and now it's gang activity. It's not safe for me to go out in the street. So the reality of the situation is that the things that are happening in Nigeria directly relates to a lot of the stuff here that we see as well. And it's something where when we go and start looking at a lot of this business email compromise stuff, we have to understand the ideology that a lot of these scammers are using. The perception is that there's cases of quick money. And if they can go and do anything to short that path in life, then they can go ahead and kind of jump up to that level, if you will. And that was how it was described to me by one of the folks in EFCC. Is it's that idea of quick money that a lot of these scammers will use. Locally on the ground, you also have cases where Yahoo boys can easily be identified whether or not they have an iPhone. And the reason for that is because if you go and look at the price of one of the new iPhones, that's $1,200. The monthly salary in Nigeria is $100 US. And even that, people are still in poverty. So it's something where if you have someone who go and has a year's salary in an electronic device, then it's something where it's like, hey, that might be somebody worth looking into. You've also got the cases where once they get all this money, they will go ahead and either buy cars for people, do some searches on SBA boys. You'll find actual shirts that they had and sweatshirts that they had made up as part of because they were doing so much SBA fraud that they were like, oh, we're the SBA boys now and everything. Turns out that store was actually sold out now, so you can't go and buy one of those shirts if you wanted to go and purchase one. You've also got pop culture references in Nigeria where rappers will go sing praises to some of the things that they're doing. And unfortunately, a lot of the rappers are actually part of the scheme too. So if you go look at a lot of the popular rappers like Naira Marley, Z Latin, and many of your other big wigs out there and everything who's rapping, a lot of their lyrics actually tie back to Nigerian fraud. There was another case where the actors are located in upstate, or originally from upstate New York, released a single. And once they released that single where they're talking about all the fraud that they do and everything, let's just say that those lyrics would be considered what I would consider insider knowledge, because they actually reference the percentage cuts They referenced the different stuff with the victims. And they also mentioned like, hey, I went to Ghana, I'm coming back with some hot stuff. They're really coming back from Ghana. So they're singing about the money laundering. And if you want, go look them up on Spotify. G4 Boys, they're right up there. G4 Boys and G4 Chapa. So go check out their new single. It was In Scams We Trust was the name of it. Also listen to In Scams We Trust. Local Scammer is another great mix where that one's totally not about wire fraud either. And oh yeah, they've been doing this stuff since 2013, judging from their Spotify playlist and everything. So they've been out there for a while doing this stuff, just kind of singing, rapped about we steal money, we steal money. Welcome to BEC.
All right, we could go all day. I cannot thank you enough, guys. Glad I was able to kind of bookend this. We're going to send out a survey. Let us know what you thought about this. We have a plethora of guys at Ronnie's level in different areas that we could bring on. If the special guest format works and you guys like that, just let us know. So Ronnie, I can't thank you enough. Thanks for doing what you're doing. We referenced you in that talk about a half an hour ago of just how we're creating a network of people that are a force for good in this area and just nuking these guys out here from a digital perspective. So Brent, as always, buddy, keep the lights on, keep us safe. And I appreciate the texture that you added. So with that, guys, we're going to sign off and we will see you. We'll see you next month. So stay safe. Thank you.
Yep. Take care, y'all.